Now we have most of our markers set up, but there's still two that we haven't dealt with. The red tells me that the importer is going to try to send it to import residue, and I don't want to do that. Now, these are the ones for my examples. And so what is the issue? Well, I chose markers in my database that are different from the MDF default. So let's go ahead and map them to where they should be in Flex. So I will select one of them. I will click Modify. I don't want it to go into Import Residue. Now, as I scroll down, at the left, you can see the different levels of the hierarchy, and that's fields at the entry level. There's an etymology cluster with several fields under that, and then there's example. Okay, notice there are a lot of different levels of the hierarchy, and so example is one of them. So under example, we could have either the reference of where the example came from or the example itself. And again, I look down at the bottom, and it says I use this when I have a marker that has the vernacular example sentence, and that's what I want. But don't forget to check the language. So here it has by default sent it to English, which is wrong. So I will check it, and the example sentence is in vernacular, so I have to choose that. And this combo box doesn't know the difference between vernacular and analysis fields. It just gives you all of the writing systems, even if it doesn't make sense. So I had to specifically choose vernacular. So that's good. So I will click OK. And now I want to go to the free translation of my example. So I will again click Modify. I don't want it in Import Residue. I come down to Example, and there's actually a cluster for Example Translation. And again, we double check when to use it when there's a marker that has a translation for an example sentence. We'll check the language. In this case, it is correct. If I had a translation in French, I could choose that as well. But in this data, I only have the translation in English. I will click OK. So now those are set. So let's go ahead and finish our import. But again, you need your inventory of markers, set what field it goes to, and don't forget to check the language. That's really important, and it can be hard to adjust that after the fact if you get it wrong before you do the import. So check and double check your work. Okay, so we will go ahead with the import. Now, here it's asking about the hierarchy. And again, for the sense level, I know that GE is always the first sense level field. Now, it could be that your data is not in such a strict order. If your senses sometimes have the French gloss before the English one, then you would need to tick both boxes. The fewer you tick, the more likely it is to catch errors, the more constrained it will be. But your data might be more free form. And so Flex gives you that flexibility of either being very constrained or flexible. Then for the example cluster, there's only one field in it, but still it wants me to verify that when I see this marker, it should begin a new example. And again, when it sees this marker, it should begin a new example translation. And so once I've got the boxes ticked and there's no more yellow, now my hierarchy is set, the key markers for the different levels. So I'm going to save this just for good measure. I want to remember my mapping just in case I have to start over again. And then I will do next. There is no inline character mapping. I will generate the report. And again, here it tells me the inventory of the markers, how many times each one occurred, if any of them are empty. In this particular data, none are empty, and what % contains data. There are times when this is useful. This might flag errors. A lot of times you can gloss over it, but it's worth checking once in a while. And now I will move forward. I will go ahead and let it display the import report. And again, this time it took 0.2 of a second to import it. So now here's my database, and I have 12 records, and the words came in. And if I go to the record that had an example sentence, I can see the gloss is in both English and French, and there's a definition. That was a new field, and the example went into the example and translation fields correctly. And there's also a note in the general note field at the sense level. So that's how you import more fields in Flex. The crucial thing is to do an inventory of your markers, figure out their meaning, and figure out what writing system they're in.